Let's just take a quiet moment together and think about a feeling that's so deeply human, the feeling of wanting.
You know that feeling? A pull. One that's so strong it almost feels like it's coming from somewhere outside of you. A pull towards something you don't even like, or, something you know deep down isn't good for you. But that feeling of wanting is just, it's undeniable. And wow, that experience can be so confusing. It can feel really isolating.
So, when we feel this pull, this unwanted desire, it can feel like this deep conflict inside, right? Something we can't really explain, even to ourselves.
It really can feel like a contradiction, almost like there are two different people inside of you. There's the part that wants one thing, and then there's what feels like the real you, wanting something else entirely. And that clash, that can be really painful.
And to try and make sense of that pain, we humans, we tell ourselves stories. But sometimes that story we tell ourselves, that's the very thing that creates so much shame.
And for a long, long time, the story we've been handed down, the one we've all heard, is that this kind of intense, unwanted craving is a weakness. I mean, look at this. Research on stigma shows that society has often just framed addiction as a personal or moral failure.
So what happens when we hear that story enough? We internalize it, and we can start to feel, well, broken. Like there's something fundamentally wrong with our willpower or our character, with who we are.
But what if that story is just not true? What if it's just wrong? Well, the American Society of Addiction Medicine offers a completely different way of seeing this. They define addiction not as some kind of moral failing, but as a treatable, chronic medical disease. A disease with complex causes, kind of like asthma or diabetes. This isn't about making excuses, not at all. It's about finding a more accurate and maybe a more compassionate explanation. Okay, so this more accurate explanation, it gives us a new lens, a totally different way to look at that internal conflict. And it all starts with a simple but really profound distinction. And that's the difference between wanting something and liking it.
Okay, think of it like this. It's kind of like planning a vacation. The wanting part, that's all the excitement. Booking the flights, scrolling through pictures, imagining yourself on the beach. It's the engine that gets you going. But the liking, that's the actual feeling of the sun on your skin when you finally arrive. That's the destination.
And here's the absolute key. These two feelings, wanting and liking, they are not the same thing. In fact, scientists have found they come from completely different systems in our brains, which means you can absolutely 100% have one without the other.
So, if desire isn't always about chasing pleasure, then what is it? Maybe a new metaphor can help us here. What if, instead of a compass, we think of it more like a magnet?
We often think our strongest desires are like a compass, right? Pointing us to our deepest truths, to what we really value, to who we really are.
But what if it isn't a compass at all? What if it's something else? Researchers have this other idea that desire can act more like a motivational magnet. Just this automatic force that pulls you towards something completely separate from whether it will actually bring you any joy when you get it.
And this is a really key insight from the science of motivation. It explains how, with some things, our wanting can get stronger and stronger and stronger, even while the liking, the actual pleasure we get from it, either stays the same or even goes down. The pull literally disconnects from the pleasure.
So, let's bring this back. What does all of this mean for that feeling? That feeling of being divided, of being pulled in a direction you don't really want to go. Well, it might mean that there's a space here for some relief, a space to just consider, what if it means nothing at all?
Just let this sink in for a moment. You can want something without it meaning anything about you, not about your character, not about your worth, and not about who you fundamentally are.
A powerful want can just be a powerful want, a biological signal. You could even call it a ghost in the machine. It doesn't have to be a grand statement about your identity or a deep reflection of your soul.
So if we can just hold that possibility, that a want is just a feeling and not a fact, what becomes possible then?